to be looked at once the detailed documents come. But on the face of it, no harm done.
Rajiv Kumar.
Thankfully, not a pre-election budget.
The elections are next year.
No, but this is the last budget that they have, and in the previous regimes you have seen that these budgets are used for announcing all the handouts, etc., and so on. So that's not there. Fiscal consolidation continues, and therefore it's a consolidation budget. And as Shankar said, no harm done. My only thing is that total revenue is 27 lakh crore, and that from tax revenue is 23 lakh crore. So that means non-tax revenue is 4 lakh crore. It would have been nice to know as to where this is coming from and whether that includes.
Do we have a sense yet of what kind of tax buoyancy are they expecting?
That's what we don't.
We'll have to calculate. We'll have to wait to see.
Yeah.
Rajdeep, you want to give us your take?
No, my disappointment as always is that, at the end of the day, if you are a professional.
Rajdeep was calling all his stock market operators. Very amused.
No,
I didn't know you were so. I thought that was Udayan's game.
No, you see, the stock market wanted a sense of certainty, particularly didn't want uncertainty over long-term capital gains tax. And that reflects in what's happened on the markets. But I think, from a middle-class professional, again, there isn't that sort of big sort of bang announcement.
No, your income tax levels have come down.
Yeah, to 39%, Rajdeep.
39%.
No, not really. I mean,
and 3% on your income is a staggering amount of money, so you should be very happy.
This is Udayan speaking. Please take both of this with a pitcher of salt.
I wanted greater rationalization, if I may say so. But look, at the end of the day, I think if all of us said at the start that this was a year of uncertainty and you had to play safe, you had to ensure stability, the government has done that. I take Mr. Rajiv Kumar's point well that previous governments have been tempted in their final year, and this is really, Rahul, the final year, to be far more populist. Yeah. She's resisted that temptation, and therefore I think she deserves credit, and so does the Modi government. I said it this morning, Rahul. I think, one thing you've got to give Mr. Modi credit for, that he doesn't have his eye always on the immediate next election. There's a few things for Karnataka there that we saw, a few schemes announced for that, but beyond that, no major setbacks.
Dr. Lahiri.
See, the focus is on fiscal consolidation and macroeconomic stability, because what we forget at times is that inflation is one of the greatest game spoilers in elections. So I hope inflation comes down. I'm happy about the personal income tax because the pressure was enormous on the government, this middle class exemption demand. But if you look
Has she done enough to assuage the concerns of the middle class that they get the short stick?
I think this will be all right, because if you look at exemption as a multiple of per capita income, India is one of the highest. In no country that I know of, maybe some African countries, the exemption limit is so much higher than the per capita income. Even if you look at the exemption limit as a multiple of the poverty line, it's very high. I mean, everyone in India calls himself middle class. But someone with a exemption, someone with an income 5 times the per capita income, how he can call himself middle class or poor? I don't know.
So this is a kind of feel-good budget where a lot of constituencies have been addressed by small schemes, etc. There is no major harm done to any constituency, but there is no reforms either. There is no major privatization agenda, etc.
But you weren't expecting that, given that we are heading into an election cycle.
That's why I said
major reforms.
So that's why I said no harm, no harm budget.
Okay, Uday, one of the other big outlays is towards railways, and the fact that on capital expenditure it's going up to 10 lakh crore rupees, which basically means the government says we know we have to do the heavy lifting to get the economy moving.
Yeah. I mean, there's no way out because they know that private capex is not happening immediately and they've stayed on the path. So last year it was up to 7.5 lakh crores. This time it's gone up to 10 lakh crores. And now we can debate those 50-year loans to states of 1.3 lakh crores, whether they'll be meaningfully implemented and we will actually get the bank for 10 lakh crores or not. That's something which can split hair over. But I think it's a step in the right direction.
Give us a sense of which sectors you see benefiting most from the budget, and we're seeing, for example, in a lot of the counters where there are companies providing material for the railways, those counters are up. A lot of companies which would benefit from the public spending that the government is doing, they seem to be doing well as well.
Well, it's basically roads and railways. I mean, that's the two major things, sectors which get much of this capex. So Road and rail stocks will do well. But you know, Rahul, much of this is sentiment. At the end of the day, after 2 days, you'll realize that this is not particularly material to the lives of those companies or their earnings. So after 48 hours, I think the impact of the budget will be forgotten. People will say it's life as usual, but as everyone is saying, that this is not any harm done kind of a budget. So no sector has been adversely affected majorly. And while the gains for the middle class are not significant, in a year where you need a little bit of consumption kicking into the economy, in a year of slowdown, I mean, for somebody, as she said, who's earning 9 lakh rupees a year, gets 15,000 rupees extra in his hand. For somebody who's earning 15 lakh rupees, gets 37,000 rupees in his hand. So even if you use 37,000 rupees to buy a fridge or the 15,000 rupees to buy something small, you've added to some kind of economic activity growth. So I think you will get a little bit of a consumption stimulus. You've got quite a bit of capex or investment stimulus. And the combination is not bad as much as the government
could she have
could
done
do.
more there, Udayan? Do you think she could have done much more, since, you know, there is this great belief that you need to drive demand, you need to, you know, find ways in which to stimulate consumption? Could she have done more?
She could have done more if she had been successful in the divestment and asset monetization agenda. Because the other thing is, while doing all this, she still has to get fiscal deficit down to 5.9%. We still haven't seen those tax assumption numbers, which gets her to 5.9%. We'll see those, but you cannot do everything. If you could still do it, if you got 1 lakh crores extra, then she could have given away much more than she has already. But sadly, as we have discussed in the morning, there is no divestment target set for next year that we know of, and there is no mention of the word asset monetization in the budget. So where is the money going to come from? Within those constraints, I think she's given as much as she could.
Fair enough.
What would the opposition be criticizing this budget most for?
For not giving enough to the middle class, because that's a ready handle. The other part is that one must look at people like P. Chidambaram, former finance minister, to sort of look into the details and come out with some stuff. And then there will be the regional imbalance story which will come up. And all the new concessions are in the areas of green energy, green hydrogen mission, EV vehicles and all. Now that will acquire the recent political color, that who is benefiting how much from those kind of things. But I want to make one point which I want to take issue with, whether Rajdeep said that she hasn't done in the pre-election year. In 2022-23, the government expanded its spending by 3.5 lakh crores or 3 lakh crores, Garg might correct me on this, after the budget. So by 6 months of the first financial year, the budget mathematics had no meaning, because you had increased your spending in fertilizer, in Anna Yojana and other spending. There is nothing preventing Prime Minister Modi from announcing schemes, say from April, May, June, July, all the way into the
But his track record suggests that's not how he operates.
No,
Well, he
last
did that to some extent in 2019. He did it in 2018-19, before the last general election that did happen.
I am giving you a live example what happened last year, 2022-23.
But the fertilizer prices went up, Shankar.
PM
You know,
Garib,
because of war.
PM Garib, you had 2 ration schemes running parallel for 800 million people each. If that is not profligacy, then tell me what is.
Okay, Rajiv Kumar, you want to respond to that?
No, I want to respond to that because you see, last year was a special year because of the Ukraine crisis. The fertilizer prices had gone up, through the ceiling. The food prices had, there was a risk, the danger that the global food prices had gone up, and they had to respond to that.
They could have just one ration scheme.
Plus the pandemic impact on the bottom of the pyramid was quite hard. Employment, was taking time to pick up. So that was a special year. But I mean, I think the Prime Minister's record on not being fiscally profligate and not actually
At a time of immense distress,
It's a time of
he was
distress.
able to resist it, and she said publicly.
Let me underline one thing what Rajiv said. The Prime Minister is conservative by nature in his approach to economics, that he doesn't like giveaways.
Yes.
But politically, when you're approaching a year with 9 assembly elections and a major general
still
election
hasn't done it.
2024, he has not done it now, but there's nothing stopping them from doing it.
I want to say something.
But that's a
Yes, go ahead.
that's a
Go ahead,
different
Ashok.
issue,
See, if you look at expenditure, what you're talking about is fiscal marksmanship, whether the supplementary demand for grants come in a huge way and upsets it. I was looking at the numbers, and if you look at revised estimates over budget, or actual out turnover budget. See, total expenditure was below 100% of the budgeted amount up to 2014-15. Then it hovered around 100, 101%, 103%, 110%. In 2019-20 and 2021, it shot up. But there were people who were demanding that government should have spent even more.
Including the likes of Abhijit Banerjee, Raghuram, Rajan, and who have you. Okay, so Uday.
There's one other thing, Rahul. I mean, we are going to talk a lot about this consumption spending or not. But before it is forgotten, I saw some signs that they are looking at reducing customs duties across sectors, from capital goods to chemicals. You know, last couple of years, there were distinct signs that this government was becoming protectionist. It was raising, and it was a very retrograde step. There is first signs that they might be unwinding some of that and just opening up the economy a little bit more. And this is a welcome sign. I haven't seen all the details, but there were quite a few items on which customs duty were reduced. And if this is a sign that they're backtracking on what they were trying to do earlier, Atmanirbhar, and therefore become protectionist, I think I would take that as a very welcome
that's
sign.
a very good point, because in recent years, that's been a huge criticism of this government, that in the name of Atmanirbhar, they've been raising tariffs at times, and this time they seem to have gone the other way.
Customs duties reduction has been more to correct the the inverted duty structure, that's one, and second, to promote those sunrise sectors like lithium ion storage, electric vehicles, etc. So I think the government is not giving up its agenda of industrial policy, but at the same time not depending entirely on protection.
There's also an inflation element in this.
And has come down on the inflation thing, because toys and so on that they.
Sure.
So you see, I think it's a very, if you like, it's a quite a directed move, and not not something.
No, let me get in Subhash Garg for a moment, because a former government servant, while you were hearing the first part of the budget, you were sort of looking at just more schemes, sub schemes being put in. You mentioned already there are 800 central schemes. Now you've added more. Is there a sense that, do you see this budget in a way again reasserting the sort of heavy hand of government at times?
So let me just, I think the tax point was also important, so let's fully understand. My sense of the announcement is that there are no new sort of levies or increase in taxes. So in that sense, it's better, but the old regime continues. Where the tweaks have been done is what Rajdeep said. On certain items which you promote through PLI or green energy transitions, etc., not much. On the expenditure, where the point you just raised come in, there is nothing which prevents the government in announcing any new scheme. Last year, if you would remember, there was no budget kept for the PM Yojana. It was continued from time to time until December. So you can continue with that. That's why the food subsidy bill has gone up. But what I saw, and that is exactly what, to respond to your point, there's so many small schemes again announced, something for 1,500 crores, something for 2,000 crores. Unity malls, for that example. Now earlier you said you will get one district, one product. Now to sell that to, you want states to create specific malls. Maybe tomorrow you would come up with some scheme to buy things there for some subsidies.
That's where politics plays a role. You've got to sort of accept that in a subcontinental size country,
those small schemes,
there will be those various schemes for different interest
But
groups.
some of it could potentially have an impact as well. For example, the current thrust on millets and trying to get everybody to consume millets. I was at Rashtrapati Bhavan recently, the first course was of millets which were served. Is this likely to work? Rajiv Kumar, do these schemes typically work?
Let me make 3 points quickly. One, the customs duty reduction is a welcome move, as Rajdeep said. You must also take into account the currency depreciation. The rupee has depreciated. That provides an automatic protection to some of the, so when the rupee depreciates, you can afford to reduce the customs duty without harming industry at all. Second point about millet. One thing that I was very surprised, I only used to read about millets, so Bengalis don't eat millets. So I found that millets, which are supposed to be coarse grain and for the poor, cost more than rice and wheat, which is, and now doctors tell us that millets are good for your body.
Superfoods.
Superfoods.
I think
and it's
it is
very
symbolic,
easy.
but it's important that coarse foods are now being called Shri Anna. and that's the new nomenclature that's been used. And the schemes announced for millets, I think, are a huge move forward. And that is the ray of hope, as it were, globally as well. Because if India can lead the millet revolution, it will improve nourishment across the board for all population, and also tend to go in the green direction for agriculture, because millets use less water, they use less fertilizers, and they provide
very
much
difficult
food.
so far to change cropping
Rajiv,
patterns.
I know, but the point is that's where the incentives, and I'm not, the details are not clear as to what the millet mission has as incentives to the farmer. But I think that will take it in the right
One
direction.
set of people who will be very happy with this budget are the top income earners, because they were cribbing that we are paying 42% tax, etc. Now it's come down to 39%. And you were asking earlier, what would the government be criticized on? I think this is a pot shot from the opposition as well, that on a year where there is so much distress at the bottom of the pyramid, did you need to bring down the top income earners' tax burden by 3 percentage points? I mean, if they're earning crores of rupees, let them pay 42% tax. Why do you need to bring it down to 39%? This will become a talking point, and it's led to great relief in the stock market, because all of these people earn more than 1 crore of rupees a year, and we're paying 42%, and they're celebrating today now, which is why the markets are...
42% is a ridiculously high level.
That's right, and 42% was ridiculously high. If you bring it down to 39, they should frankly bring it down even further. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, let's go with international practices here.
Such a passionate defense, Rajdeep.
Sorry?
No, nice. A
That's
passionate
a passionate defense. It is a passionate defense.
Very
It is a
nice.
passionate
Well
defense.
done.
I can see
I
that.
just want to make the third point. On this expenditure marksmanship, how do you contain expenditure at the budgeted level? Mind you, there is a basic contradiction in Manrega and Right to Food. These are entitlement-based programs. You can't say, I'll spend only this much. You'll have to spend whatever is needed. So by definition, budgeting has become a difficult job, because you don't know how much you'll have to spend on an entitlement-based project.
Okay, we're getting some questions. A viewer asked a question, and feel free to answer this. So will a person have to stay in the old regime to get that tax exemption on 7
No,
lakhs?
they have to move to the new
You
tax
have to
regime.
move to the new
tax
regime.
Absolutely.
You have to move to the new regime.
She
So
made it
that-
very clear.
7 lakh rupees exempt.
That's right.
Yeah.
So those in that have to move to the new regime,
Yes.
right? Okay. That's
That's what we are understanding. Is.
Yeah, she said it very clearly.
okay. So that
repeated
seems
it.
But
reasonably
it's also
clear
very
then.
clear. I want to
But
go
of
across
course,
the panel to try and understand.
everyone has the exemption for up to 3 lakh. So that minimum threshold has been raised.
That's
That is
zero.
across everything.
Of course.
No, the other
So you
question
have
is,
5,000
given
rupees a
the
month.
kind of incentives that are being given to try and create a whole ecosystem for the manufacturing of semiconductors in India, and in that space, then how long do you think it will be before we start seeing the fruits of some of this effort?
It will take a time. The only fly in the ointment, Rahul, here is that there seems to be a semiconductor glut across the world. Everybody is up production to such an extent that by the time our production comes to market, the world may not need so many semiconductors. So we have to be a little careful about that.
Then let me take issues with you on that, because the demand for semiconductors in economy like India is going to be explosive and exponential. So I'm not sure that this semiconductor
Globally, there is a glut.
Globally, I know,
But can you create incentives to ensure that the ones manufactured in India are the ones that are consumed in India?
Unless
there
the
would be cheap.
semiconductors manufactured in India are competitively
They will
priced
be.
to global ones, there is
but
every semiconductor chip company in the world, the shares are dropping.
You see, but
Dropping by 40,
but the
50%.
gestation period is close to 3 or 4 years, and you have to anticipate the demand at that point of time. And given where we are going, given the digitization, given our acute dependence on imports, of semiconductors at this point of time, I think creating semiconductor capacity in the country is a very good move, and the income customs exemption on capital goods for IT industry and startup, I think is again a supportive
No, but the
move in
counter to that,
regard.
Udayan, is that there is no option. You have to create semiconductor manufacturing capacities in India, even if it is tricky in terms of cost competitiveness and how long it takes, and the glut that you're talking about, because this is a space you can't afford to vacate to a country like
Remember
India.
the time when the auto industry was
logic
on your
here.
knees, because the Chinese, you couldn't import the semiconductors from China. You don't want that situation. It's strategic. It's a strategic industry.
The resilience point, actually.
Semiconductor, we should see to it what kind of chips those semiconductors would be used for. There is no Indian manufacturer who is making chips for Indian consumption. So these semiconductors which are going to be made here are basically being made for the foreign companies to supply to us.
Because the minister answered this question precisely at the World Economic Forum. And I mean, I don't know, I can't remember the details, that the semiconductors which are required for the Indian industry and then will be manufactured, there is something about module, something about nodules.
I'll tell you
heavy nodules and
so
medium
what
nodules.
the nanometers, so earlier we were probably going for very fine nanometers, below 25,
Below 8, below
right?
10, yeah.
But now they have relaxed it to go for higher nanometers,
Yes.
which are the used one. But the chips who make it are not being made from those semiconductors in the country. So still this would be exported, and then as Shankar was saying, whether this is competitive to us, priced lower to us than the Indian manufacturer.
The PLI
The sound logic, Garg साहब इसमें ये हो सकता है कि because the world is moved away from just in time supply chain to just in case supply chain, where you want to build resilience, you want to create a supply of your, but whether the use case for those chips, as you said, is critical. So we don't know much about it.
So we don't make any chips. We import 100% of chips.
I know, but this is exactly
By
what...
making
the
semiconductor.
hardware, electronics, hardware, if we don't produce in the country, Professor Paul Raj of Stanford has said, the bill will be more than $500 billion by 2028. That is, and it is strategic, because you use it in the defense equipment, you use it in telecom, you use it all over the place. So creating a hardware, semiconductor, foundry, upwards capability in India is necessary.
I think we digress too much away from the budget on the semiconductor issue.
Yes.
I think there are some smaller issues which people want to hear about.
What they want, somebody just said that, just to clarify on this, on the 7 lakhs new regime, they say if you are between 6 and 9 lakhs, you end up paying 10%. That's what it is now, right? Yeah. So the new tax slabs are 0 to 3 lakhs, you don't pay tax at all. 3 to 6 lakhs, you pay 5%. Yeah. 6 to 9 lakhs, you pay 10%. 9 to 12 lakhs, you pay 15%. 12 to 15 lakhs, you pay 20%. And above 15 lakhs, you pay 30%. So
that's correct.
That's, and all moving to the new, under a new tax regime.
So basically back of thumb rule is from an income level of say 8-9 lakhs all the way up to 15 lakhs, you end up saving something between 15 and 45,000 rupees a year. So I mean, depending on which slab you are in.
So that could potentially stimulate some kind of consumer demand.
That's what I was telling you. That if
No,
you're
I think you should. Last year this was up to 15 lakhs. You saved about 50 odd thousand rupees, right? Yeah. But there was not much movement towards that new regime.
New regime. That's
now
the thing.
15 to 16, same logic applies. Why would people move towards that? Because this that 50,000 rupees advantage is not enough. For those below 5 lakhs last year and 7 lakhs, in any case you become tax exempt. So it is between 7 to 15 lakh, they are getting some advantage, and that's not attractive enough. For those who are 15 and above, there is no advantage.
No,
that's why I mentioned this.
One should be very careful about tax
16.
exemption and tax rebate. Tax rebate is if your tax liability is less than this, then you get a rebate.
Exactly, that's up to
So
7.
even if my income is above 7 lakhs,
You don't get anything.
I don't get anything. There's no advantage at all.
So there is a price of losing out on the exemptions, which is factored by the people, and chartered accountants will tell you that whether
Is there enough of an incentive to move to the new regime or not in your view?
Also, you made investments previously on the belief that you will continue to have the EET or EE or EE, whatever. Now, if you're going from old regime to new regime, there is a confusion about whether you continue to get that.
But what she made a change this time, and we will need to understand its implications. She said this is a default regime. The new
tax regime is called the default
and
tax.
Therefore, specifically, you will have to ask whether I
Can go
want
back
to
to
be
the old regime.
treated on the old.
So in your view, then is there enough of an incentive to move to the new regime
You
or
need
not?
to look at the fine print in a slightly greater detail, Rahul, because I think at some point it becomes profitable enough to move to the new regime. I haven't done those numbers yet, but I was going to say for senior citizens, this is a good budget because their deposit limit has gone up from 15 lakhs to 30 lakhs on which they can avail a certain level of interest. So I think they will be quite happy with that lifting of the ceiling or doubling of the ceiling.
The other thing that happens is that when you go to the old regime, up to 3 lakhs, that exemption doesn't really matter for people earning crores. It matters only for people who are at the margin.
Of course.
Because 5% or 3 lakhs is a very
We can
little
start
money.
getting some reactions now. Ajay Singh joins us, Chief Executive of SpiceJet, has in the past worked on the communications piece of BJP campaigns, now speaking completely in his corporate capacity. Ajay, welcome. Your sense of how this budget is actually likely to play out amongst corporates?
I think, it's a very solid, stable, prudent and growth-oriented budget. I think it does most of the things that all of us expected will happen. The fact that the government is, obviously getting a far larger amount of tax collection at this point of time, the government has been prudent enough to ensure that this is not spent on totally populist kind of schemes. You've seen that there is a increase in infra spending, which is from 7.5 lakh crores to 10 lakh crores. That should spur growth for sure. It's a prudent budget in the sense that if you look at the fiscal deficit target, it's been kept at 5.9% with a promise to go to 4.5% by 25-26. So that's pretty good. If you look at the MSME sectors, they significant measures for them, providing a credit guarantee scheme for 2 lakh crores. That would be greatly beneficial to, this is collateral-free lending to the MSMEs. So this will help quite a lot. The 95% refund on, deposits made by them for tenders which were not, were never fulfilled during the COVID period. That will be helpful. This expedited payments, if you see, I think one thing that they've done is that they've ensured that payments which are being made to the MSME sectors, those will be accounted for only when the payment is actually made and not when a bill is raised or accounted for. So that will help MSME sector get actual real cash when they bill somebody. So that will help quite a lot. I was also interested in seeing the number of things that they did on the ease of doing business. I think quite a few there as well. FM mentioned 39,000 compliances that have been done away with, 3,000 rules, statutes which have been decriminalized. This whole concept of a national registry, I think that is extremely useful. You put everything into one registry, and right now there's so much trouble in providing the same information to different agencies. I think that's a great step. Using the PAN card for just like Aadhaar is used for personal identification, to use PAN as a universal corporate identification. I think that's a pretty useful thing. Aadhaar to be used as address proof, again, a very useful thing. And then, of course, there is this whole impetus of consumption-led spending, which should result from the lowering of personal income tax. I think all these are pretty significant sort of measures that have been taken in this budget. So I think this is a election year, as you know, and there was a fear that the government might be tempted to be a little more populist in such a year. And this is the last full budget before 2024, and I'm delighted that the finance minister has stuck to providing a really solid, stable, prudent and a growth-oriented budget. I think one other point I wanted to make is that this whole idea of using digitization in all forms of governance, I think that's an important theme in this budget as well. If you recall the speech, the word research was used again and again. This whole concept of a lot of study on different areas, labs for 5G, for example. I think this labs for artificial intelligence, agri accelerators, and so on and so forth. So I think a very progressive, modern, digital budget.
We're getting. Thanks very much, Ajay, for your first reactions. You said, what will the opposition say? So the opposition is looking at the fine print, and they're saying, look at the budget estimates versus the revised estimates.
Okay,
And they've promised more and spent less. They're looking at agriculture, where they're saying, they're looking at the PM Kisan, looking at education and health, and saying, please look at the gap between budget estimates versus revised estimates. This is a government that promises more, spends less, and is grabbing the headlines at the moment. Health is one example that they give. We were talking about it, and education is another example. They say there remains a huge gap at the moment between the revised estimates and the original budget
So while that's politically expedient, Udayan, for the opposition to attack the government on this, they're also building real physical infrastructure. But the opposition will say you're not spending enough on the social side, which is what was the criticism against Chief Minister Modi in Gujarat as well.
No, the opposition will say all this, but I think this is, they're on thin ground this time around with their criticism of the budget. I think it's not an easy budget to tear down for the opposition, because I think it's more going for it than against. But I think we've got numbers now on the disinvestment target as well. And I think Rajiv's picked out a number of 61,000 crores for next year for the disinvestment target. If that is indeed the case, then I think they're going to fall well short, because...
it also doesn't have a separate target for monetization. It's a total other receipts.
Total other receipts.
Total
and
other
there
receipts
is, there is
61.
also
What apart from disinvestment, what will
there might be dividends, there might be interest income. So
some-
I got some message from someone which said that it's 51,000 crores.
That too.
So we can add it to the deficit number roughly.
They'll fall short. They did 31,000 this year.
Yeah, but but 61,000 I think is a low target, and I think they should meet it, because with the Container Corporation of India on the block already, as it were.
That is 17,000 crores.
One of the things that we're just picking up is that the Finance Ministry in the print has said that the new income tax regime then becomes the default tax regime.
That's what it's said.
And the citizens will have the option of availing the old tax regime, but essentially now the new income tax regime will be the default tax regime.
That's what Mr. Garg was saying as well, that the new tax regime is the default. You can choose the old tax regime, not the other way around. So, and I think she continued to emphasize during the speech that all that she's offering in terms of reductions, rebates, exemptions is all for the new tax regime and not for the old tax regime. So that's an important, but I think on Rajdeep's point about criticism from the government, I was wondering what the assumptions are in terms of gross tax collections for the coming year and by what percentage they are going up, because till you know that, you're in no position to assess whether this budget is a sound budget or not.
Senior Minister Nitin Gadkari is speaking at this moment. Let's pick up some reactions from the Modi cabinet.
Honorable Speaker, sir, with these words, I commend the budget to this August House. Honorable Speaker, sir, with these words, I commend the budget to this August House.
Get some more reactions on the union budget. Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman delivering a budget which is being applauded for not being fiscally reckless and being conservative at a time when you've got elections coming. What you're seeing on your screen are some of the things that have become costlier and some of the things that have become cheaper. And I've got Siddharth Zarabi, Managing Editor of Business Today Television, now joining us in the studio. Siddharth, give our viewers a breakdown of what becomes costlier, what becomes expensive, especially those that ITTV consumers are likely to be consuming.
Well, beyond some of the tinkering that has happened as far as customs duty is concerned, I don't know if you have already covered this ground, but I have a fundamental question which Rahul may have been answered. The new tax regime which was introduced did not do well at all. So what is the government's belief that there will be whole-scale adoption, and there's also a revenue foregone number which Udayan called as an indirect stimulus of sorts for the economy. But I genuinely have a question on that, because changing and your tax regime in where you may not see benefits directly is something.
No, according to you, is there enough incentive for our viewers at this moment to switch from the old to the new regime?
That's not clear, because clearly while there is a reduction in the peak rate, the bulk of the adjustment has to happen when the new returns are filed. So it's difficult to project. I would say this 35,000 crore number is up in the air at this point of time.
But it is also.
I think the new regime is beneficial for rich people. The old regime is better for poorer people. So there will be a switch because the exemptions have got limits.
No, I think,
Mr. Garg is disagreeing.
I think there is no,
Yeah, go ahead with that.
there is no straightforward answer to this because it depends very much on the individual who's paying the tax and how their taxes have been planned in previous years. You cannot do a vanilla answer to whether you can switch to the new tax regime or not and whether it makes sense for everybody to do. Mr.
So
Garg,
how do you define rich? If you define rich as 15 lakh plus,
Yeah, 15 lakh plus I think is the question.
if it is rich,
No, not
then it's the new tax regime is no advantage to you.
So it's that 7 lakh to 15 lakh,
Now 16,
which is
instead of
going to
15,
become the
16.
critical sector which will have to take
addressed
these
to that.
choices.
Who when they reach 16 lakhs may have a second thought whether they should continue with the default tax
Exactly.
regime or go back to the
No, but
exemption tax
can you
regime.
shift twice?
Once,
Yeah.
once.
No, earlier it was annual to annual. Now,
No, only
now,
once.
No, now we have to see whether this is default means every year you can change or you can
No,
do.
but that was, when it was introduced, I remember there was this discussion that can you do this shopping?
No,
That this year new,
Ashok,
next year will become old.
that was
even
for
on
the corporate taxation regime.
No,
That was the-
we've got
that-
an important number now. I think we've got the tax collection assumption for next year, which has gone up from 30 lakh crores to 33 lakh crores. 10% jump.
20 to 30, 23.
30 to 33.
What?
30 to 33. Gross tax collection.
Gross tax.
Yeah.
That's correct.
Gross revenue.
That you would say is realistic, 30 to 33, 10%?
My sense is that this 10% is a reasonable
also
estimate, but
think it's a
maybe
doable
slightly on the higher side. But what we will need to see is
nominal
that this
growth-
year's revised estimates,
Subhash, if the nominal growth-
just a minute, revised estimates 30 may be slightly lower than
So it
what
could be
actually
29 to
planned.
33.
So this might be fine.
The net tax revenue was 20,000, 2,08,000, no, it's 208.7 trillion rupees.
What?
Compared to 193 point.
No, you're talking about net tax.
talking about net
Net. We're
So
talking about-
gross
Net
is,
is
gross will be
Subhash, no,
just
I just said,
adjusted by
Gross
40%.
tax increase receipts, revised estimates are 30 lakh crore.
Correct.
And they're increasing to 33 lakh crore.
Yeah, that's what
And that's a
10%.
10% increase, and if you assume a nominal GDP growth of 10%,
You still won.
you're still one.
You're still.
So you're well, I mean, I think in fact you're conservative, because buoyancy of 1.1 or 1.2 is
So that's fair.
good to assume. So that's a,
I
it's a
don't think
good.
it's an
Let's get
unfair
some
assessment at all,
reactions
Not an
from
unfair
India
assessment.
Inc. Rajiv Memani joins us. He heads Ernst & Young in India. Chandrajit Banerjee is with us, Director General of CII. I'll go across to Rajiv Memani first. Mr. Memani, lot of interest in our studio, especially on the aspect of income tax. Let's just start from there. On your broad sense of whether it makes sense for our viewers to think more seriously about the new tax regime, given that previously there hasn't been enough of an incentive to switch over. So let's start from there.
Yeah, I think hi Rahul, I think the main emphasis on the budget is for people to move from the old tax regime to the new tax regime. And the new tax regime has much lesser deductions and everything else. My sense is if you look at the biggest deduction that people avail of is generally HRA, and then you have ATC benefits. So those people who are not availing HRA in a significant way or ATC benefits, so I have a feeling that there will be a lot of shift that will happen up to income levels of say 25 lakhs, 30 lakhs, 35 lakhs, or at very high income levels which are at maybe 2 crores, 3 crores plus, because then the number starts becoming material. At the peak, the difference is almost 3.5%. Most people don't get that kind of deductions. And at the base level, people don't utilize that kind of HRA or that kind of ETC level. So I think everyone will have to do computation for itself, but I think this will entail a significant shift, because if you actually look at the numbers, the large part of the people who are going for personal tax, 80 to 90% are people with much lower slab limits, much lower real income levels. So up to 25 lakhs, 30 lakhs, my guess is a lot of people will actually shift.
Exactly what I was saying.
Well, that's
that,
interesting.
The effective tax rate becomes
It depends on
lower.
what exemptions
The
you
only
avail.
person who seems to disagree is Siddharth Zarabi.
No, this is the whole point. Look at what Rajiv is saying. ATC is a family in itself. and these are commitments, ATC commitments. Let's say if you're taking insurance products, you can't switch off insurance.
Correct.
And while it is sometimes missold in India from a taxation perspective, the HRA part, what happens to urban workforce? In our urban cities, let's take Mumbai as a sample, less than 20% of people own their own houses who work in the Mumbai region. For example, there are other numbers all over the country. So you will see significant difficulties in the transition to the new tax regime. We heard, and I say this carefully, we heard a similar bullish view when the new regime was announced, and it fell flat.
No, Siddharth is right, because you have Mediclaim, which gives you
Cannot be done with.
50,000 exemption. You have the ELSS scheme, which gives you 150,000 rupees. You have insurance, you have other products.
Shankar, sorry, but a new pension scheme for
New
the private
pension
sector.
scheme.
Each person
There is
has
no
to do his
pension
own
guarantee.
calculation. There's no one
Yeah.
answer to that question. Chandrajit Banerjee, one of the things that you were concerned about when we spoke just before the budget was that because it's an election year, there mustn't be too much reckless populist spending. The Prime Minister and the Finance Minister seem to be very mindful of that.
Indeed, and we had talked about fiscal management. The budget sticks to the fiscal target, which is very good to see that. That's very, very important. And we had spoken about, there was some apprehension yesterday whether we will see this impetus on capex, and I think we are indeed delighted that the recommendation of continuing with this strong capex spend is focused upon.
Let me throw it back at you again and again. You, as say a champion of Indian industry, pushing the government to spend more, and the government throws it back at you. Chandrajit Banerjee is saying that why can't India Inc. do more to lift the India story? Why aren't your members investing more at this moment? If the prospects are as bright as they are, why isn't the money talking?
The money is talking, Rahul. Actually, if you really look at the capacity utilization across, it is crossing 75 to 85 in many sectors, and some investments are pretty much back on the boardroom discussions. And if you see certain sectors, the investment plans have come in thanks to PLI. But I see this really triggering off a lot of private sector investments coming into, and we have been saying that private sector is pretty much set now. And
But you've been saying that, sir, with due regard, you've been saying that for the last, except for the 2 COVID years, you've been saying that since 2018. And, it's time that, that you all walk the talk.
Yeah, walking the talk obviously comes. See, private sector will invest when the demand picks up, and the private sector will increase its investment, and private sector's increasing of investment will come as and when there is a reason for them to do that. And as you see, if you really look at the numbers of capacity utilization in the private sector, it had come down during COVID, and which has picked up in the recent past. At that point in time, of course, there was a strong need for the government to spend because the government did the heavy lifting. It is important for them to do. The government continues to do the heavy lifting so that private sector can adequately come in. So it's not
Quick interjection, Chandrajit, Siddharth here. Just tell me, in your quick reading, do you think the facilities offered under the new tax regime will lead to consumption increase? You represent corporate India here. What's your own sense? Quick take.
So quick one is that we had expected, we had been recommending the tax, incentives to be, tax deductions to be given for lower brackets. But what has happened is we have seen a few of measures taken to benefit individuals, standard deduction of 52 plus 1,000, all of that. So I do think that consumption demand getting boosted, because even from the highest to the lowest in the new tax regime, you have some space for everyone, and it's very important that, and probably it's a good sort of
I think the key takeaway here is from this line that was in the speech, and I'm repeating this: the new income tax regime to be made the default tax regime. However, citizens will continue to have the option to avail the benefit of the old tax regime. This betrays the lack of confidence whether this scheme will take off.
Well,
yes.
I'm not sure, Siddharth, I'm not sure. Because I think last year was, with the cap going, limit going up and the tax rates coming down up to 15%, I think all the exemptions that you were talking about, right? I think if you do the net, maths here, I think people will find.
Well, let's get
people
Mr.
will find
Memani in
moving.
again. Mr. Memani, you want to respond to what Siddharth said, that this process of transition is not going to be easy from the old to the new tax
I hope
regime?
it happens.
No, I disagree with Siddharth. I don't think it's such a straightforward response. I think the amount of the 10% difference in rates, and you know, in the earlier regime, standard deduction was not available, and they have added standard deduction. So they've added standard deduction. There's almost a 10% rate difference at many slabs. So if you look at if you look at the total numbers, what it comes when you are paying taxes at 15 lakhs in the new regime and 15 lakhs under the old regime, the difference is almost 40 to 50,000 rupees. So it's not that straightforward a response. So unless, as I said, unless you're availing significant HRA, then it's a different thing. I don't think people who are earning 10 lakhs, 12 lakhs are investing up to 1.5 lakhs in ATC. It's unlikely unless it's someone very young who's not spending so much in other things and is backed by family or something. That's a different thing. But otherwise, so I would think that there will be a transition that will happen, and that will be there. I think the other, I would only like to add one or two things. I know we are having this debate, but 54F, the change that they have made, I think that's also a significant one. So earlier when you sold shares of unlisted companies, or if you had capital gains, and you were paying, and if you had capital gains, people generally used to protect that capital gains to some extent by buying a house or taking other things, that they have capped to 10 crores. So a lot of people earlier who had capital gains of 60 crores, 70 crores, 80 crores, bought houses and other things, and they almost squared off the capital gains to zero. They've capped that to 10 crores. I think that's also something that is which will have an impact. So I think a lot of people who are wanting to close transactions and they're selling shares, significant shares, I think they're better off selling before 31st March to avail of those benefits. And I think there is a significant clogging that happens at CIT appeals level. So if you look at 80% of the pendency of cases, it happens at CIT appeal levels. There are almost 5 lakh cases that are pending. So I think they're putting in 100 for at least the less complex cases, smaller cases, resolving that. I would say that is also a positive. But in these tax things, you always have to read the fine print and figure out what's there, what's not there. But I would say that, and even similarly on the personal tax thing, this will not be like what happened earlier when almost no one shifted. I think here you will have a shift happening, and definitely at very high levels of income, the shift will be higher.
I also want to complete this loop on this income tax discussion. Rajdeep, the question that you were asking, I think the truth may be somewhere in between. The finance minister assumed that the relief she's giving out to the taxpayer class is around 35,000 crores. So let's say a lot of people do not switch and we get a relief of say 15,000 crores. Either way, if this number is somewhere between 15,000 crores and 35,000 crores, it is not a game changer for consumption by a long shot.
It's not a game changer.
Not a game changer. It's nothing.
Has it then done enough to spur demand?
No, it has not. It is not. It's a trickle. I mean, look at India's GDP and say 20,000 crores, 15,000 crores, 25,000 crores. These numbers are meaningless in terms of the overall consumption picture.
What more could you do to inspire
That is a different question,
no,
sir.
but that's an important question.
No,
I mean, you can wish you can wish for horses and all.
No, it's not
No,
that.
Rajiv, if you had succeeded in asset monetization, if you had succeeded in divestment, if you had brought expenditure reforms,
you could have done a lot more.
If you had harmonized all the schemes, you have 8,000 schemes listed on just under DBT.
But those are not part of this budget. It could have been. What you have in hand is this, and this is not a consumption game changer in this budget by a long shot. The capex part is important.
Let me bring one point. So, up to 7 lakh, those people who are, and that's a very large number in our total taxpayers base. That's a very large number. 5 lakh was maximum, and 5 to 7 is also significant. I don't have number, but it will be over 1.1 crore or something of the taxpayers. That's a fairly large number. Now they have a choice that up to 7, if you want to avail the new regime, then you don't have to save in the life insurance and others. That might be a factor which in fact increases the consumption, right? So for them, so my sense is up to 7 lakh, people will switch very, very large number. But above 7 to 15, it's where they have to make choice. But above 16,
No one.
No one. The big question really is the treatment of previous savings instruments that you have invested in.
That's correct.
That treatment is not clear.
You can't unsave. You can't unsave.
Smriti Irani, the Minister for Women and Child Development, speaking to Mausmi Singh at this moment. Let's get some reactions from the Union Cabinet.
ये उनसे पूछते हैं लगातार प्रधानमंत्री मोदी के जो नारे भी लगे जब निर्मला सीतारमण ने बजट पढ़ा मैम, तो कहा जा रहा है मिडिल क्लास के लिए और आम आदमी के लिए इस बजट में बहुत कुछ है।
मैं इतना ही कहूँगी कि बजट को इस सूक्ष्म दृष्टि से नहीं देखा जाना चाहिए कि मात्र आज ही की घोषणाएं हैं। प्रधानमंत्री जी के 8 वर्षों की तपस्या और प्रयासों का फलस्वरूप आज आपको बजट में कई ऐसे विषय मिले जिसकी न सिर्फ उत्सव मनाया जा रहा है देश में, बल्कि सदन में भी जिसकी भरसक प्रशंसा की गई है। चाहे मध्यम वर्गीय परिवारों के लिए जो टैक्स का बोनांजा है, चाहे उसकी बात कहें, अथवा अगर आप बारीकी से वित्त मंत्री जी के भाषण को सुने तो गरीब को जो राशन पहुंचाना है, 80 करोड़ नागरिकों को जो राशन पहुंचाने का पूरा खर्चा है 2 लाख करोड़ का, वो सिर्फ और सिर्फ भारत सरकार उठाने वाली है। तो ऐसे कई सराहनीय कदम आज बजट में प्रस्तुत हुए। महिला होने के नाते जो सेविंग स्कीम्स आज विशेषतः वित्त मंत्री ने प्रस्तुत की, उसके लिए मैं उनका विशेष अभिनंदन करती हूँ। और वो विशेष अभिनंदन के प्रधानमंत्री जी इसलिए हकदार भी हैं कि महिला सेल्फ हेल्प ग्रुप को रूरल इकोनॉमिक इंजन की दृष्टि से आज जो एक नया फ्रेमवर्क मिला है बजट में, मुझे लगता है आगामी समय में ग्रास रूट में इन्वेस्टमेंट और एंटरप्राइज की अपॉर्चुनिटीज को बढ़ाने वाला है।
और खासतौर से जो रिबेट मिल रहा है मैम 7 लाख तक बढ़ा दिया गया है, तो जो लोअर मिडिल क्लास है उसके लिए भी इसमें है। और बात करें आत्मनिर्भर भारत,
वित्त मंत्री जी ने लोअर मिडिल क्लास हो या फिर भारत के सामान्य परिवार हो, उनकी परचेजिंग पावर को बढ़ाने का उल्लेख किया है। सेविंग्स न सिर्फ महिलाओं के लिए बल्कि जो हमारे वरिष्ठ नागरिक हैं उनकी दृष्टि से भी जो सहयोग आज वित्त मंत्री जी ने दिया प्रधानमंत्री जी के निर्देशानुसार, मैं उसकी भी बहुत बहुत प्रशंसा करती हूँ और आभार व्यक्त करती हूँ, स्पेशली ऑन बिहाफ ऑफ सीनियर सिटीजन।
विपक्ष आलोचना कर रहा है कि कुछ भी नहीं है आम आदमी का।
वो खुद अपने आप को इतना खास समझते हैं कि आम आदमी के लिए क्या किया गया शायद उनके समझ से वो परे है। मुझे लगता है अगर विपक्ष एतराज़ करता है कि गरीब को अन्न मिल रहा है, 2 लाख करोड़ का खर्चा भारत की सरकार कर रही है, तो उस पर मैं टिप्पणी ना करूं। विपक्ष अगर एतराज़ कर रहा है कि देश के मध्यम वर्गीय परिवारों को भारत सरकार नरेंद्र मोदी के नेतृत्व में समर्थन दे रही है, वो प्रफुल्लित हैं, अगर मध्यम वर्गीय और विपक्ष प्रफुल्लित नहीं है, तो मुझे इस बात की खुशी है कि हिंदुस्तान का सामान्य नागरिक खुश है, विपक्ष भले ही नाराज।
शुक्रिया हमसे बात करने के लिए। यहाँ पे स्मृति ईरानी।
One of the things the government spoke about in the budget, Rajiv Kumar, was about building AI centers.
Yes.
Now, what can the government do in trying to build AI centers, and does it help in any practical?
3 centers of excellence for AI, which is the development of the AI, if you like, the sort of software and the AI, the data analytics and building of algorithms, etc., etc. Now that's needed because, and here is a very good related point, see, for all the semiconductor design and chip design, the most important part is the design of the semiconductor and the chip, which is being done in India for a while, but not as much as you want to, and the IP is all concentrated there. So if you actually improve your design capability and then combine it with the hardware manufacture, that's when you actually bring this biggest gain to the economy, and that's what is being attempted in our new AI policy.
Siddharth, you spoke to Rajiv Chandrasekhar. We were discussing before you came in about how long it may take for some of the government's thrust on semiconductors to start having a visible impact which can be felt tangibly.
Well, that's right, and I think one of the more important things that we can look forward beyond the budget is the groundbreaking of the first semiconductor plant in roughly a month from now. I just wanted to add one point, and Udayan, we were discussing this earlier. There was a senior citizen scheme that was available for investment. It was called the 15 lakh LIC senior citizen scheme.
Gone up to 30 lakhs.
Yeah, but there were 2 schemes available earlier. So it's the same amount. I just wanted
15 plus 15.
15 plus 15, it's not an additional amount because there were 2. You were allowed to have 2 schemes. The current one has been allowed to lapse. Therefore, 1st April, it will still be 30 lakhs. Just
That's
one
in any
addition.
case not tax exempt. So that income which you generate, sorry?
So Udayan, what are the markets celebrating? The market is up 1.5%.
That's only higher
Is it largely
interest.
because long-term capital
That
gains
is no
tax
tax
hasn't been
implications.
tinkered with?
Also, capex has gone up to 10 lakh crores, which the markets like. I mean, they like the fact that this is an investment-oriented budget. So, and the capital gains tax, of course, is very handy. A little bit of middle-class income tax thing, so which helps the consumption stocks, and nothing wrong with the budget in any case.
No, but Chandrajit Banerjee was saying that investment decisions are being debated in boardrooms. When do those debates reach a resolution? When are decisions taken? Do you see that happen this year or being pushed out?
No, that's the corporate part of it.
So one point that I just got a data point which, so last year they were supposed to, public sector enterprises plus capex was X amount. Public sector enterprises were supposed to invest 4.69 lakh crores. In the final, the revised estimates, it's 4.1 lakh crores. So they have not been able to invest more. So while we are telling private sector to invest, even public sector enterprises have not been able to fulfill their investment promises. So the
you
question,
think 10 lakh crores will be that much tougher?
So the question that is being asked is, A, there is this component of the states, plus there is the component of the public enterprises. Now the public enterprises investment acts as a multiplier to this 10 lakh crore investment thing. So while this is good that it has been increased, 30% may not result in 30% increase in investment. It might be less or lower depending on the environment at that time.
Will this be sectoral? I mean, we've been talking about the so-called K-shaped recovery. Are we, which are the sectors today which will, looking at this budget, feel life is better after the budget?
The government capex is very straightforward. It's roads, highways, defense. I mean, they don't go out of that ambit. I mean, 90% of that would be in three sectors.
No, then if I can join on that, because this, so there is no real increase in the public sector's own capex. 469 last year, now 489. Actual
487.
487. So it's more or less about the same time, not even inflation accounting. The government's capex goes up, and that has two components. One is the state part, 140, 139. The remaining 860 is for the government's own account.
Right.
That there is increase in four major items. Railways goes up from somewhere around 160 to 240, so there is one increase there. Roadways, the roads goes up by another 50,000 odd crores. But there is one item which is surprising me this time. They are providing for 30 or 40,000 crores for capex support to oil marketing companies.
Which
capex support?
Capex support to the oil marketing company. Now, what is this? Now, is this?
No, this is a continuation, sir. Sorry to interrupt you. If you recall, during the current financial year, 22,000 odd crore were provided due to the losses suffered by OMC for keeping prices fixed.
That's precise, but that is for actually compensating for the loss on lesser.
That
LPG.
cannot be construed as
He's
capex.
saying it's not
Right?
capital
That's not
expenditure.
capex.
That's not a
This has happened earlier also.
This has
No,
happened.
no. This has never happened. This time of capex support styling, the bonds which you are talking about, they were
the
the
header may be that, but
Right.
when this 22,000 was given, it was given as budgetary support to the PSUs.
What accounts for this increase? I'm just saying these are the four elements. So this is the third element, 30,000.
And the fourth?
And the fourth element is again a higher capex to the BSNL, which also is a practically
But actually, I don't want to split hair. But
How much is the increase for BSNL?
Let me get the numbers because these are available.
Does it make
now.
sense, Udayan, for the government to keep investing on BSNL given
No,
that
no,
they are-
finally it will be sold like Air India when you can't support those losses.
That's not happening. That is very, very clear.
No, it doesn't say, but
I have a
that
plan.
the government will have a strategic presence in the telecom network, and BSNL will be that one, because BSNL is the one which is completely free of any imported equipment, etc. And the minister,
But it serves very
the
little
minister had
purpose, right?
gone out of his way to announce that when he allocated more money to the BSNL.
Good luck with that.
Good luck with that, but you know.
In the whole world, there
Dr.
is
Kumar, I just want to bring in one point on this point, and we earlier were debating this. There are two R's, roads and railways. There isn't one R which is recession, which the world is going to deal with. Just, I mean, coming back with the permission of all of you, the taxes on income, and Udayan, here lies the stinging tail. This is taxes on income, not corporation tax. The revised estimate for the current financial year is 81.5 lakh crore.
81.5?
8.5. Sorry, I misspoke. 8.15. I misspoke. For the next financial year, it is projected to go up. So where is the giveaway? Where is the new income tax scheme and 35,000
No, but
crore?
from these numbers you can't, because there is
Yeah,
buoyancy
there is
also.
some
The buoyancy
income increase.
adjusted for this rate change,
Right?
still results in a higher.
Then anticipating the tax collections will keep going up.
Siddharth, but I think you are making the sort of mistake of comparing revised estimates with budget estimates. You have to compare budget estimates to budget estimates. because
Budget estimate to
revised
budget estimate is a very large jump. It's a very large jump.
But you see, because revised estimates also will be higher, because as last year, this is a conservative budget.
But sir, the economy will slow down
So-
also.
so-
Nominal growth is lower.
So what are
Nominal growth
the
is 10%. Nominal
so
growth
what are the
assumed is
risk
10%.
what are the risk factors, Udayan Mukherjee? What are the risk factors when you look at going ahead, given the fact that we could see a global recession, at least a soft recession in several parts of the country, of the world? You could see inflation proving more resilient. What are the risk factors?
Just for information, so that BSNL was 45,000. In the revised estimates, it has been reduced to 33,000. And for next year, it is 53,000.
Okay,
This is fresh investment into BSNL.
Into BSNL.
So there are some
like
things that
53,000
don't
rupees
change.
down
But,
the lane.
but you want to respond to risk factors.
So, now I'll just finish off with what Mr. Garg is saying. This was a debate which we had last time as well, that the stock market gets very happy when a certain capex jump is announced. But finally, when we look at the numbers, we realize that actually much of it will not fructify as great capex going into, or fresh new capex going into the economy. And therefore, the material impact is far lower than the optical impact of it. And the stock market realizes it after 2 days and forgets about all of that.
It's called the day after.
It's the day after. So, basically not anything
there is a
incrementally
presumption.
huge. No, it's not a presumption. It's happened last year as well.
The presumption is the market doesn't know as much as we do. So it will go down after 2 days. There must be material. See, there is one principle that many economists believe in: the market is always right. Because if the market is not right, you should bet against it.
Ashok, that we know is not true.
No, you should put your money where your mouth is. If you really think that this price in the BSE or NSE is not sustainable, you should short it.
No,
You should short it and make some money.
It is just one.
Don't use the word short. For the last few days, the one word that should not be used is short selling.
Your new designation is Vice President Hindenburg. By the way. For saying this, you have got a job from
You've been
Hindenburg
advising
now.
Hindenburg, is it?
Ashok Larry is saying, why are you getting me into trouble? I want to play out the word cloud. This is the data intelligence unit word cloud of the thrust of the Modi government's priorities. So if we take that up, and there are some interesting things that you can pick up. For example, MSMEs being a key thrust area mentioned 13 times. Green and the thrust towards a green economy mentioned 16 times. This was quite the flavor at the World Economic Forum in Davos. There's something we're seeing being reflected in our budget as well. Cooperatives being mentioned 15 times. See, some of the words are obvious, therefore don't focus on that. Pick the new words which are interesting, which show you what the priority is. For example, millets and Shri Ann being mentioned 15 times. That's a new thrust area of the government. Then you've got obviously development, energy, customs duty being mentioned 20 times, and cooperatives again. Have they done, Rajiv Kumar? Because when as much on cooperatives as they were wanting to,
They've done in 3 sectors.
They have done there, and but I think laying this heavy emphasis on cooperatives at this point of time, I'm not so sure whether the bet will come off, because
Why not?
Because what you require is a lot of groundwork at the cooperative level for for the farming sector and for the others, because the promotion of what you call agripreneurs, which will actually bring together the farmers and run these cooperatives. See, cooperative has been a long-standing thing in this country and has not succeeded.
So let me add one data
what
point
is
to
new
this.
here is what is important.
Yes, Shankar.
For the last 3 years, the government of India has been trying to map the entire cooperative credit societies. And 2 months back, the Agriculture Ministry Standing Committee on Agriculture questioned the Agriculture Department.
And there you
They said that we don't know how many of them exist, how many of them operate, and what do they do.
That's what I was trying to say.
This
That
is
the
from the
ground-
parliament
you know,
record.
so here's something we want to do. I want to go
Cooperative
across to all our
societies,
pundits as we do
societies,
this.
agree.
Our producers are asking, what should the branding be? Give us one punchline, one phrase of what this budget really represents. So let's now see how sharp all our pundits are. I'll start with Shankar here. Headline batao.
Atmanirbhar GDP.
Atmanirbhar GDP. Okay, that's Headline number 1. Producers, please take note. Okay. Who wants to go next? Rajiv Kumar doesn't seem ready yet. He wants some more time. Okay.
Mr. Garg?
Who's ready?
So.
So headline थोड़ी होती है सर. ये so आप headline बोलोगे मजा नहीं आया. Headline दो.
So budget.
Oh, how can so is hardly a headline?
No, but
okay, we'll come back.
If it is a so budget, it has to have a so headline.
No,
Rajiv,
consolidating the gains.
Consolidating the gains. Okay. Udayan, are you ready?
Or not doing enough.
Okay, he's saying not doing enough.
I would say harmless, feel good.
Harmless, feel good.
That's what earlier.
It's harmless and it's feel good. I mean, there's nothing much material to it. I mean,
so original the no harm done wala jo hai.
Yeah, it's not a bad line.
I'm no harm done is the best I can give. I'm saying Atmanirbhar GDP because there is a definite response to the global challenge in this.
You know, that's the point. When you say feel good, and that's where, you know, the question of risk factors. If you remember last time budget comes February 1, 2022, a month later, Russia and Ukraine are at war with each other and the world completely changes. Given we're not looking at a situation perhaps as cataclysmic as that, but are there potential risk factors?
No, let's finish.
I'll give you a
over
short
the next
answer.
6 months, yes.
It's not 6 months, next 2 days.
Yes.
So the FOMC meeting in America is
That's
far
right.
more important than this
Which is
union
tonight,
budget.
right? Which is later tonight. So there, you know, I have a friend in the markets. You know, since
You have several apparently.
I have a friend in the I have a friend in the market who says, you know, even more important,
must tell
even
everyone.
more important than what Nirmala ji has said today is what is said in the US tonight.
Can I just reveal something from behind the scenes to our viewers? Udayan was sitting and taking notes when the finance minister was speaking, and all the market operators were calling Rajdeep.
By the way,
I was very amused to see Udayan sitting studiously taking notes, and all the markets
coming down.
No, I have a
Markets
mutual
coming down.
funds man, but the fact is that I have a lot of friends I come from South Mumbai, and they are littered with, you know, they live by the markets.
There is a genetic, there is a genetic component. He is part Gujarati.
No, I'm not Gujarati.
No, wait,
I was born
Rajdeep,
in
you get your headline. Is your headline ready or not? Siddharth, are you ready with your headline?
And it is to Udayan's street cred. The moment they knew Udayan was in the studio, they wanted me to ask Udayan what is happening. So that's, you know, that was my limited role.
That's a smart thing to do.
So they are listening to Udayan's warning. The market is not as
exuberant as it was. From 1,000 it's come
it's already down less than 100.
Ashok Lahiri, are you ready?
But that tends to happen. That tends to happen.
Optimistic.
Cautiously optimistic. Cautiously optimistic. Okay.
So GDP growth.
Siddharth, you want to give your
Rahul, just before this, questions have already started flowing in. Can you check with your experts, this is a direct question, whether senior citizen specific deductions like 50,000 on bank deposits, 80 TTB and medical expenses 80D are applicable in the new regime for senior citizens? Otherwise, it would be a loss for senior citizens. This was just to come back, but my headline, Modinomics, and that's our budget theme as well. The reason being, it is clearly the mark of Prime Minister Modi all over the budget. There is certain amount of giveaway even in the tax thing, regardless of the debate we are having. It is targeted at the masses, at the Aam Aadmi, and therefore I believe it is Modinomics. The fact that capital gains has not been touched and there is no mention of it is also I think linked to what the Prime Minister told us yesterday. This budget is important. These are my words of what he said. From a global perspective, so don't rock the boat. That is Modinomics.
आप अपनी headline बताओ.
I don't want, you know, look, the moment I give a headline, it gets me.
Do you disagree with Modinomics, Rajdeep?
No, look, I've used the word and I've been given credit by Sudhanshu Trivedi for Moditva. So we can go with Modinomics. I think that's a fair point. Actually, that Siddharth makes. You know, Narendra Modi is, when he came to power, I remember in 2014, a number of right-wing economists thought that he was going to become this Thatcherite, you know, a transformative, you know, going to sort of dismantle the public sector and forgot that, you know, right-wing politics doesn't lead to right-wing economics. Mr. Modi is not a right-wing traditional, you know, Ashok Lahiri may well have been among those who was hoping that this was India's moment of opening up the economy. It's not happened. I think Siddharth is right. It's very cautious, risk-averse, ensuring stability, which maybe in the year that we are, is perhaps the right approach to take.
I just want to make 2 points. One, the nominal GDP growth in this budget has been assumed to be 10%.
It's very good, yeah.
Which is cautious.
Yeah.
It's optimistic and cautious. Second point about the tax regime that I want to make is, see, the new regime has given some concessions, which was not there earlier. The old regime remains as it is. So you have the old choice of the old regime, and if you choose the new regime, you have to pay less. So definitely it's a concession, because you can't do worse. If you were in the old regime, you are no worse off. If you were in the new regime, you're better off. So
incrementally, at least positive.
Incrementally, it's better.
Yeah,
it's better for the tax.
The downside risk.
Yes,
that's correct. You can defer on that one.
The most important downside risk, one would be the FOMC, two would be the world markets. If there is a synchronized recession in US, Europe and Japan, then our exports, which are a major driver of growth, will actually go for a big loss. And that could be a real. I was waiting to hear the finance minister tell us about incentives for exports. He started off by saying that I didn't get any, in the sense that sort of
there's a question from another friend who's in the MSME sector wanting to know, what do you believe is the big incentive for the MSME sector? We are the ones who are the most stressed. We haven't seen enough. There are some announcements that she made about credit, that is extension of the credit scheme, but they say we wanted more. Is there something more, or is there enough?
The better way to look at it is railways and highways alone have got 5 lakh crore. Now, who are the railways and highways dependent? They are dependent on a bunch of MSMEs and of course large companies as well. This money will ultimately go down to them if execution happens. 5 lakh crore, you should read that number from that point of view.
Let's go across to Sanjeev Puri, Managing Director at ITC, joining us on this broadcast. You were speaking earlier about the need to create adequate demand. Do you think the budget, in your view, has done enough to be able to stimulate demand in rural and urban pockets, Mr. Puri?
Absolutely. I think there are multiple interventions that the budget has taken to stimulate demand, right from boosting capex public works. I think that itself is going to create jobs and demand. I think the whole focus on the agri sector, the whole focus on the tourism sectors, the focus on climate transition, the focus on local developmental models, I think all of them really are going to spur job opportunities, entrepreneurship opportunities, and therefore lead to better incomes and demand. They certainly augur very well, and I think the relief provided to the common man on income tax also is also going to spur demand. So it's indeed a very growth-oriented, very progressive budget, and it reflects.
Sanjeev, your stock is the most watched on budget day, and I believe taxes have gone up for ITC. Can you tell us what exactly the increased tax burden is, and how it affects your prospects, and how much of it you can pass down to consumers?
I can't really hear that question properly, but I thought it was to do something with
No, your own company, Sanjeev.
The idea
taxes on tobacco.
Broader.
Taxes on tobacco.
Yeah.
How has it been in this budget for you?
Yeah. So that's not something that. Yeah. So you're the third person who's asking me this question, and each time I have said that here we are to engage on broader issues of the budget and economy rather than to go this path which will take away all the time itself. So I'm happy to do that on another conversation. But right now, I would like to rather stick to the overall, budget and specific sectors.
Okay. Overall, though, what is your headline, Mr. Puri, for this budget? If you want to give a headline.
It would be a very growth-oriented and extremely prudent budget.
Come to 1/3.
Okay, prudent is a word that's being used. Dr. BVR Mohan Reddy, joining us, founder, chairman, and director, Kia Limited. Your take. What is your headline from the budget? What's that one big takeaway?
I think it's very comprehensive. She covered every facet of the economy, and I believe that's inclusive too. And some of the areas which have not been touched so far, things like technology, have also got a play in the budget at this point of time. The finance minister talked about setting up 3 centers of excellence for artificial intelligence, or 100 5G laboratories being set up. So therefore, the technology play has also come into the budget right now. In addition to that, fairly large amount of exposure to education, no number of teachers being appointed, 38,000 or so, And important is, as technology comes today, we require more amount of skilling. So she also talked about this 47 lakh apprenticeship program that will come by. So several things which make it inclusive and also make it very progressive. And it's a very comprehensive budget.
I just want to walk across to the budget intelligence dashboard. We'll pull out the live Sensex and Nifty numbers, and then maybe Udayan can explain why the markets were more excited earlier and don't seem quite as excited just now. So if you look at just the intraday play, for the BSE to start with and the NSE here on your screen, it was up within 1.5% earlier, now down to 0.66, just 395 point. Why is the Sensex losing some of its initial enthusiasm?
You know, Rahul, the other number which you should pick up is, if you can, some of the European markets this afternoon, because I think we are all heading into that FOMC meeting. Yes. For a trader, he's seeing 1200 points on the Sensex on the table, and he wants to take those profits home before the FOMC meeting and not come back to work tomorrow and see the market down 500 points. So I think some of it is profit taking. Some of it may also be realization after looking at the fine print that actually on the face of it, it looked like a massive boost to investment and consumption. But the reality is that we are not getting to get that much of a material boost in terms of either investment or consumption, and it will be business as usual. No harm done, yes. Incremental gains though, not very significant. So life carries on, and now you move the focus to the FOMC meeting straight away, which is more important in any case. Also, I would also...
so why don't you explain to our viewers what you think is most likely to happen in that big meeting that happens?
Nobody in the world knows. I mean, the expectation is a 25 basis point hike from the Fed.
25 to 50, right?
Some 25. Some say 50, but that's an outlier. 50 would rock the market, unless 50 comes with a statement saying we are almost done and we are going to go very slow from here. See, global interest rates are far more important than this 20,000 crores of consumption and 50,000 crores of investment capex that we are talking about. This is not going to move the needle too much, but huge amount of global selling in the days to come will certainly rock, because we have got a big current account deficit problem already. So you don't want that kind of a situation at all. And the last thing I would say is, note that all Adani stocks have started slipping once again today after a successful completion of the public issue. So I don't know whether the market is also sensing that that saga is not done, and it may come back to haunt sentiment in the days to come. So part profit taking...
Do you see downward pressure on the Adani counters continuing?
Yes.
Over the next several
Even Mr. Garg is saying yes, yes, of course.
The stock market tells you.
That's right. So does that, if I may very quickly ask, does that mean that they still haven't, even despite the FPO being fully subscribed yesterday, they still have serious... No, yeah, being fully subscribed, they still have their reservations.
Rajdeep, I think that issue was pulled...
No, very quickly, they still have their reservations then.
Of course, because the issue got pulled up, but the issues have not been addressed.
So in a sense, they're not convinced about even the manner in which it got fully subscribed.
And the issues with this.
Okay.
Rajdeep, 2 points.
Yeah, very quickly.
One, the issue was shored up. They were white knights.
Yeah, you can call it bailout, shored up, whatever word you want to use.
The second point, the Adani stocks are part of the larger stock market. The larger stock market is going to be impacted by what's happening in European indices and in the US.
One small point, which is that finally it should be put to rest that we are decoupled. You know, this thing that goes on and on and on, we are not decoupled, we are completely coupled, you know, with the global markets and with the global economy. And we will go up and down with
Which is why...
Now, but we need to, this is it, we need to make a huge effort to make sure that we improve our shares in the world markets, whether it's of exports or of manufacturing, etc., which is the only way for this economy to prosper and not just go along with it. That's the big effort.
Can come in on the point which I wanted to make actually, the global markets, the way it's so important now. And the number which we have not discussed today, the fiscal deficit of about 18 lakh crores, 6% of GDP, is a very high number. You need to finance so much of borrowing from the system.
But she still said that we'll reach 4.5% by 2025.
That is a different, you see, I don't think anybody takes that too seriously, because that is 25, 26. 4.5, 2 years adjustment of 1.5% or so. I don't think we will, let's...
You know, when you say these things and given what you've done in the past, then I'm thinking, you're saying we say it and we don't take it very seriously. No, you are not allowed to say that.
No, let me say this, because why I'm saying so, let me, you see, the FRBM Act was amended.
Yeah, that's the point. The history says it.
The history says it was amended to bring to 3% of fiscal deficit by 2021.
See that?
Well, the FRBM is a rolling target in some ways, Dr. Garg.
No, but that's the seriousness we attach.
No,
That
we
is
will
the
come
point.
back to that. I just want to quickly introduce, because he's been waiting for some time now, Ashish Chauhan, the Managing Director of the National Stock Exchange. Udayan, if you could take a question with Ashish in terms of the broader markets, really.
Well, Ashish, the obvious question to you, is the stock market rally today mostly a function of the capital gains tax, or did you take away anything else which might have excited the market to spark off that 1200-point rally to begin with?
No, I think in a way capital gains tax is a part of the relief, but broadly the infrastructure creation and ability of this government to execute put together gives tremendous confidence to people that when they start ordering for the cement, steel and other equipments for construction, it's going to really create some demand even of the workers using soaps and other things. If you look back, how the US created infrastructure, how Japan created infrastructure, and how China created infrastructure on the back of that infrastructure only, they created that growth, right? So that for me, one is that infrastructure creation itself creates a long-term impact on growth, but while it is being created, it creates tremendous amount of opportunities in terms of all sorts of companies for having those profits increase. And that's what is the prime reason that infrastructure impetus is one part. Second part, despite reducing income tax, the government is able to give more money to each state, and on top of that, they are able to ensure that their fiscal deficit goes down from 6.5 to 5.9%, and then over next 2 years, they want to bring it down to 4.5%. I think in some ways, the path to discipline is also very important, and people are getting those messages that this government is pretty much committed to fiscal discipline. And that's what, I mean, the messages are too many, but overall, I would say it's not only the capital gain tax part, but the infrastructure and job creation story is what makes this budget pretty much an excellent budget.
You were pulling up the stock market just now, but I wish you had pulled up the bond market as well, the price of the benchmark yield, because that is the most important thing to monitor on budget day, more even than the Sensex. Mr. Garg, if you have the number, if you could tell us, because I'm looking at the borrowing numbers from the government. While the 15.5 lakh crore number for gross market borrowing is within limits, the net borrowing figure of 11.8 lakh crores is a bit on the higher side. Now, we were talking about this exact issue, that in a situation of global turmoil, you don't want to be in a situation where you're falling behind on your fiscal deficit and your macro is looking slightly wobbly, and you are actually putting pressure on your domestic interest rates with your borrowing program in the market. So I need to see the bond deals today to see how that reaction has been.
At this moment, there is a relief rally in the bond market. So it has come down to 7.28%.
Oh, that's quite a fall. 7.4, I think, was
7.3, 5 or something from that. So about 5 to 6 basis points.
So it's been a well-behaved.
Ashish Chauhan, one of the matters being discussed extensively in government circles is about private investment. You know, your sense, given all the companies and boards that you're speaking to and getting feedback from on the investment outlook within companies listed on the NSE and how aggressive they're likely to be given continuing global uncertainty over the next 12 months?
See, in a way, we have created a myth of private investment which will create jobs. We tried even private investment, which actually was infructuous from 2004 to 2014. It was actually, a lot of it went into sort of unproductive situation. So just by spending money, if anyone could create infrastructure, I would be delighted. But the execution is what matters. And of course, if you can actually create execution with good outlay, you are able to create better infrastructure. Sometimes I look at the people discussing the numbers as if when you put in money, you start getting ports and bridges. They don't. You need to actually start working on it, and probably this Gati Shakti and other execution which we have seen over last 7-8 years has been phenomenal. And for me,
one final point.
Private sector also.
But one final point
also would come in. Private sector would also come in if the government sector also comes in, right?
But one final point, we've all agreed in a way that the economy is not decoupled anymore with what's happening globally. There will be a lot of focus on what the United States does, what the US Fed does. Do you concede that the markets now increasingly need to be seen not just with what the finance minister has said, but what's happening in the rest of the world, especially in the United States? Therefore, what happens tonight in particular on interest rates will make a difference to what happens tomorrow morning.
Naturally, world has always been interconnected, and India also has been interconnected. It's not that it's connected today only.
Siddharth has a quick question. Siddharth?
I would just like to say that for the markets, the newer input is what we are discussing, but we should also look at the fact that some of the fine print in terms of the expenditure allocations will also drive sentiment on the markets, really, Rahul.
We should take a break. Prime Minister Modi is to speak on the budget shortly, and interestingly, the finance minister has been postponed to 4 p.m. The PM.
That's a press conference.
Yeah, the press conference.
But this has happened before.
Yeah, but it was supposed to be.
Singh's time.
Yeah, but it was normally the FM speaks around 2. Now she speaks at 4. 3:30
is the FM's press conference. It's been moved to 4. Yesterday there was talk about 3. Okay. I think it's adjustments.
So we'll slip into a quick break. We're not done with the budget just yet. Udayan's going to be here from 6 to 8 p.m. He's tracking the budget very closely in a 2-hour special broadcast. Rajdeep's up at night. Siddharth Zarabi, the entire Business Today television team, tracking every aspect of this budget. Our Pandits are with us, people who've really built budgets and made them over several years and therefore have very sharp insights on what to expect. Ava Bakaya comes up on the other side of a very quick break. We're tracking Modinomics 23. Stay with us.
Coverage worth your time. Blazing fast, actionable budget analysis. Budget intelligence that will dominate. Nirmala speaks, we decode in real time. Unrivaled, unmatched. Udayan on your